This is Anarchast.
Another edition of Anarchast, your home for anarchy on the internet. I'm here with Doug French at Freedom Fest in Las Vegas. Doug French is with Laissez-Faire Books and prior with Mises.
Right.
And first question I ask everyone is, how did you become an anarchist?
I enrolled in to pursue my master's at UNLV here in Las Vegas, and I had taken a couple classes, and I was looking through the course catalog, wondering what to take. And I saw History of Economic Thought, and the instructor was Rothbard. I didn't know who Murray Rothbard was, but I decided, yeah, I'll go ahead and take the class. But first I asked one of my fellow classmates about doing it, and he says, no, you don't want to take Rothbard. He's too much of a kook. So why don't you take the class independent study with somebody else? And I said, no, I don't want to mess with that. I think I'll take Rothbard and see what happens. Well, he, shall we say the rest is history. I learned directly from Mr. Libertarian.
Wow. Imagine if you had chosen to take the other course, your life would have been quite a bit different.
It would have been completely different. But I ended up taking 2 direct courses under Murray, and then I wrote a professional paper under him, and then I wrote my master's thesis under Murray. Had Hans Hopp on my thesis committee, so it was a very, very rare opportunity that I didn't appreciate, frankly, at the time, but as history goes on and I tell this story, people are really quite amazed, and so it was wonderful to me.
Yeah, that's unbelievable. And so you really approached the anarchy angle from the economics side, is that correct?
Yeah, I would say that I was more or less a blank slate, even though I was, say, in my 30s. I had done various jobs in my life. I'd been a bartender. At the time, I was working in an entry-level job at a bank. I really didn't have any clear ideology. But once you listen to Murray, not that Murray beats anarchism into every student he has, but just his telling of history just seeped in, and over time I got to know him. I would spend time with him in his office, and it just had an incredible effect on me. And you just can't defend the state after talking to Murray for too long.
So right then and there, I guess it was a few years or 1 year that you were in college?
Yeah, actually it was 2 or 3 years that this process took place, and then I actually left and moved to Reno. And Murray was still here, and he was still alive, and he and I exchanged letters. As much as he wrote, and as many people as he corresponded, I still have letters to this day from Murray Rothbard. We stayed. He was incredibly generous with his time. He was an inspiration. He felt like part of my master's thesis should be published in a mainstream economic journal. It urged me to try to get it published. I got turned down 8 or 9 times, and then finally he said, well, we'll publish in the Austrian Econ Journal, whatever it was called. Unfortunately, he told me that in December of 1994, and then 2 weeks later he died tragically in New York. So eventually the piece was published in the Quarterly Journal of Austrian Economics. So, but I owe my adult life really, and my ideology and my career essentially to Murray.
Wow, that's great. And so after college, did you go, where'd you end up? Because I know you ended up at Mises.
Yeah, I worked in the banking business for 20 years here in Las Vegas. I was, ironically enough, I wrote a master's thesis about early speculative bubbles and increases in the supply of money. And then after I got done with that, I worked in the banking business and participated in pumping up one of the biggest bubbles of modern history with the housing market here in Vegas. Of course, the market crashed. The bank I worked for failed. I was the real estate lender, so I was let go. And so I was here for the boom. I was here for the bust. By the way, the booms are much more fun, even though the Austrians say we need that cleansing. of the bust. The booms are much more fun. But I did that, and then Lou Rockwell and Bert Bloomer, who was the chairman of the board at the Mises Institute in the fall of 2008, asked me to come work for the Mises Institute. So I did that for 3.5 years down in Auburn, and but I've since joined Jeff Tucker at Laissez-Faire Books. That's what we're doing.
That's great. And just briefly, I'm curious to get your take on bubbles. Do you foresee, or do you see us as being in a government debt bubble at the moment?
Yeah, I think it's probably the biggest bubble of all time, and it has all the earmarks of both that you have in bubbles. The idea that the asset cannot go down in value, the idea that you can borrow against it as much as you want. There's tremendous credit being used in that market, low interest rates that spur it, and they're done maybe not a speculative froth that you might see in more retail markets, but I think from an institutional standpoint, and the fact that people have rushed into this as a safety measure just gives it all the earmarks of a bubble that is going to crack up in a spectacular fashion. Banks are loaded with long-dated paper that even this move in the 10-year bond from 1.5 to 2.5 has got to be damaging on a mark-to-market basis. A number of banks, if anybody who reads Grant's Interest Rate Observer, they've done a calculation that even the Fed has lost 3 times its equity just on its balance. So, and this will be similar to the S&L crisis, the classic borrow short, lend long. Eventually, you got to pay more for your short-term money than you're getting on your long-term investments, and it's going to be a spectacular wipeout.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it. We read at the Dollar Vigilante about the dollar collapse and all that. What's your prediction? What do you think is going to happen in the next few years? What's it going to look like?
Yeah, I wish I knew. I think that for the moment, I think the dollar is probably the best property on a terribly bad block. So I think probably people are okay in the dollar for the moment, but over time, I think people have to look at other alternatives. We talked about Bitcoin, of course, this morning. That is not on the radar of many of the people who are at this conference, but gold, silver, Bitcoin. You've got to look at all other alternatives because eventually we will have inflation. We've got tremendous reserves that have been built up. They're not being lent out. Velocity of money is tremendously low, and you can't print velocity. But eventually, those reserves will be turned into loans and increases in the money supply, and the dollar will feel the brunt of that.
And then interest rates will probably rise dramatically.
Yes.
With the amount of debt in the system, it's a big mess.
And then we're looking at bankruptcy. I don't know what chapter of bankruptcy would be the federal government, but they probably don't have that chapter, but that's probably something they should be working on.
All right, so there you go. From Freedom Fest, Doug French from Laissez-Faire Books, and that's all from Anarchast, your home for anarchy on the internet. Peace.